There is a catastrophic shortage of teachers in the United States. Nationally, there are more than 280,000 fewer public school teachers than at the start of the pandemic, according to federal data. And the California School Board Association told us that the state needs roughly 100,000 more teachers to provide high quality education for students. And multiple states, California included, are easing requirements for teachers in the classroom. Over the course of this week, we're speaking with teachers and experts asking, why is there a growing teacher shortage? What's changed in the classroom since the pandemic? And what's being done to remedy the problems? Diana Lambert, the senior education reporter at EdSource, which is an independent nonprofit organization that specifically focuses on education in California. She explains the bigger picture.
There's definitely a teacher shortage. There's been a teacher shortage in California for years. It has really impacted science, math, special education, and often, English learners mostly in the past. But now it's so bad in some districts that it just really goes across the board: English, social studies, all different topics. It's always been like this, except that now it's worse. And that's because of the pandemic. The rural areas are definitely the hardest hit. For example, Konocti Unified up in Lake County has about 50% of its teachers working on an emergency credential who aren't fully prepared to teach the courses they're teaching. And last year they started the year short 12 teachers, even with those 50% of the teachers underprepared. So that's because when the rural areas are hard, your pool of teachers, people who are qualified to be teachers, is small. And it's hard to recruit people to that place. What they have done though, and that's really interesting thing I think, is they've turned to Montana. So they go to Montana and they go to teacher fairs in Montana, trying to attract teachers from that state here. The reason being that Montana has, there aren't very many jobs for teachers in Montana. And they figure that Lake County's similar. It's rural. It has a lot of outdoor activities. They try to attract those teachers there, and a good portion of their teachers are from Montana.
So why are teachers so hard to hire and retain right now? I asked two teachers over at Roseville Unified. It's a more affluent school district, which officials told me they're also experiencing the pressures of smaller candidate pools. The teachers I spoke to have decades of experience in the classroom and tell me it wasn't until recently that they feel that they didn't have to worry about living paycheck to paycheck. They say teachers are not paid enough, and it's just one of the issues that's keeping other people from getting into the profession.
I teach freshman English 3 days away from the end of my 28th year.
I teach AP Psychology, and I've done 30 years in the state of California.
Socioeconomic status.
It was the one profession that I swore I was never going to do. Both of my parents were teachers, and all of my aunts and uncles were teachers, and everyone assumed I was going to be a teacher, and I said, no, I'm not going to do it.
Both my parents were teachers. My dad taught at Sac City College. My mom taught first grade, so I saw both ends of the spectrum growing up. So I was not going to teach. That was not going to happen. I saw how hard they worked. You don't make a lot of money. The salaries are public. It's not a secret. I started in Sac City Unified teaching at like $22,000 a year. Like, new teachers were not paid well at all.
Yes, I'm listening.
I taught summer school for 7 weeks. I made $3,000. I thought I was so rich. I taught from 8 to 12 and made $3 grand in 7 weeks. And then waited tables at night.
When I started teaching, it was really rough, and getting the first paychecks and hardly anything coming home, and finding out how much goes to the pension plan, and having teachers who are veterans coming and saying, you got to start your 403B now, your tax shelter, you've got to start that now because you have to build it up for retirement, because the retirement's not going to be enough, and I have no extra money. I have nothing I can put in there.
Let's hit the history books for a minute to help talk about teacher pay. Up until the mid-1800s, teachers were almost entirely men. The country's modern public school system was born. More women also began to teach. By the 1880s, women made up a majority, 63%, of all the country's teachers. The gender divide grew. The most recent federal data shows that of the country's public school teachers, 75% are women, 25% are men. The California School Board Association's chief information officer explains this is a factor when it comes to teacher pay.
I think there are a number of factors. Some of them are historical. If you want to go back several decades, teaching was traditionally considered women's work, and I think because of that, teachers have not been compensated properly or haven't been given the respect that a position of such importance deserves, and I think we see that still persisting to this day. More recently, we've seen some economic factors, particularly if you look at the Great Recession. During that period from 2008 to 2012, when school budgets were being slashed roughly 20% in California, school districts were forced to do a lot of layoffs, to do programmatic reductions, to cut back on services. That made the teaching profession a lot less attractive. The conditions were more difficult for teachers. You had aspiring teachers or people who were considering the field looking at all those layoffs and saying, why would I want to go into that industry? And then you just also had the continuing factor of compensation. Some teachers had to give back salary. It was a very trying period. I think that scared a lot of people away from the education field.
There are a lot of people who will say, well, teachers have summers off and they've got all this extra time. But the reality is, especially when you're starting, you're taking classes constantly during summer because your salary is going to be based partly on how many units you have.
We get excited about a 2% raise and, at 50 something now, and I'm like, really? 2%? Mind you, we also get health care. We have great health care benefits, but salary-wise, no. We're still behind. I don't think you should be in your 50s to 56 before that happens, but that's part of this profession.
The main thing I've heard about teacher pay is that it's not enough for beginning teachers, that beginning teachers are really suffering.
What is an average salary in California for a teacher now?
Well, the average salary in California, and we're talking average, is $82,000 a year. Beginning teachers are averaging about $51,000 a year, and veteran teachers around $100,000 a year. Whether it's enough depends a lot on where you live, how expensive housing is where you live. Some districts don't pay 51 either, and they're in the 40s, right? It's really difficult for them, and they're paying off their student loans, et cetera, at that time. So that's really what I hear the most, is that pay isn't high enough, and that should be moved up in that first step of the salary schedule.
Teacher pay isn't the only reason why people are either not entering or leaving the profession altogether. Coming up tomorrow, we look at teaching since the pandemic started.
The job of teaching has become more complicated. We're also social workers in a lot of ways. We are mental health counselors to a certain extent.
Teachers in California, and I should probably only speak for myself, are tired between the political pressures and post-COVID. We were heroes for about 5 minutes, and then it was like, you can't pick your own books anymore.
Now, if you're a current or retired teacher, let us know what you think about teacher pay and how the landscape of teaching has just changed in general. Reach out to me and the team at tothepoint@abc10.com.